Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
So I had an alien experience that happened over 3 days a couple months back. I have no photographic evidence. There was 3 people, including myself, but only I and my other friend could see them. The other friend is the one who told me about them before she moved in with us, and I did in fact experience what she told me would happen. We even made music together, and they gave me the notes to play. A lot of things happened over these 3 days. Before I even begin to write out what happened, because it's a long story, is it best to keep my mouth shut? Is it even worth typing out? Could I be in actual danger if I tell these things to the public? To the Anon who is reading this, if you feel like I'm baiting you, then don't waste your time. Just ignore the thread, because I promise I'm not here to mislead anyone. What I want to do is discuss my experiences to see if anyone else has had similar experiences, but I don't want it to be futile. Since I have no evidence, is the only option I have to write it out and hope people believe me? What do I do? I don't want to have an endless amount of replies calling me schizo, and I've spent months thinking if I want to discuss it or keep it secret for my entire life, but I feel I am doing a disservice to humanity by keeping it locked away. But without evidence, what's the point? Why didn't I get pictures? I was told that if you try to take pictures of them, they would leave and not come back, and their behavior in general was unthreatening, so I didn't want to scare them away. Picture very much unrelated did not look like this.
How many drugs were you on?
A good bit for the first 2 nights, but I shit you not, I was completely sober on the 3rd night when we made the music together. It's easy to say schizo, or even drug-induced schizo, but you need to read the whole story first. Should I post it?
Play the song and upload it.
Okay, let me make a MIDI of that real quick, and in the meantime, I'm going to post my story. Backstory. I'm a musician of 20+ years and was not a believer in extraterrestrials. I have a hobby of studying physics. Wife and I have a longtime friend. We all went to high school together, who fell on hard times, moved in with us when she and her ex didn't work out. She moved in, told us what her life had been like in the year or so since we've seen her. She mentioned she had several alien experiences. The first was when she saw a fleet of ships at the beach with about 400 or so other people, all who witnessed it. We think nothing of it since she's done a lot of drugs. Even with her photos, it was WUA, gotta be an explanation. Didn't spend too much time thinking about it. She tells us about an alien she befriended, then she named Hue, as in hue of light. She tells us that she saw the faces of her loved ones in the constellations of the sky. She claims to have had a continuous relationship with this Hue in particular, and she can feel when he comes around. She claims this is from the same fleet that forms the triangular light patterns that are captured a lot on phones these days. Similar to what Commander Fravor talks about and what he recorded, think nothing of it and move on with life. Few months later, after she moves in, she randomly walks outside and says, "Huey is here." Huey is a lantern-like orange light across the neighborhood where there is normally no light. She says he always keeps his distance but is curious, and he's always observable when he wants to be seen by the aforementioned light. I think it's strange but still think nothing of it. A week goes by. We have a party and do some drugs. All 3 of us stayed up for 5 days straight. Nothing paranormal happened for the first 2 days. On day 3, I go to take a shower, and I start seeing strange bug-like things everywhere, all flying to my face. I've done a lot of mind-altering drugs in life, so I just tell myself it's hallucinations and think nothing of it, aware of what kind of effects drugs has on the psyche, especially combined with sleep deprivation. Smoke starts gathering from nowhere and consistently surrounds my face. Even when I try to push it away, it keeps coming to my face. The smoke reveals a picture of what looked like an alien computer system with a map of GPS coordinates, with every person on the planet marked and plotted in real time, and then reveals a language out of dots, like Morse code, with markings I don't understand. I just assume I've gone full schizo and proceed to get a shower anyways. Walk back into the living room, tell my wife and friend, didn't know this drug could make you see shit like this. Friend who claims to have experience with aliens says, you can see it too. She lifts up her pants to show me her sock, covered with thousands of amobea-like bugs. Says she sees it too. Walks over to my bookshelf to pick up a feather I have for decoration. Says the plants and the bugs are attracted to natural things. Vines start emerging out of the IRL non-drug-induced plants I have for decoration in my home. The more you focus on them, the more they disappear, just like the bugs from earlier. I know none of this makes zero sense because even on drugs that cause hallucinations, the chance for two people to see the same things consistently over the next 24 hours is essentially impossible. My wife can't see any of this at all. She starts thinking we're schizo. Try to retain my sanity, continue to think little of it. Other plants in the house have a blue hue, but only with one eye open. The left eye couldn't see the blue. The same smoke that contained the computer earlier was congregating toward my ceiling. Blah, blah, more general hallucinations throughout day 3. Day 4, alien boogaloo. Friend says she feels that Hugh is here again. We go outside to look. It's nighttime. There are 10 or so lantern lights scattered across the neighborhood. Know that after my previous experience, some weird shit is happening. Sit outside with her on a mat and spend about 3 hours looking at them and talking amongst ourselves. Get the idea to flash my lighter at them to see if we can communicate. I flash to them and they flash back. One is in a tree, one is behind us, several are on the other side of the park, etc. Small camp-like buildings are erected near some of the lights, and it's a goddamn light show. Purples, blues, reds, greens, all flashing around, moving across the ground and through the sky. Could not believe it. Think I'm 200% schizo at this point, but we're both seeing it. My wife is still inside and is getting very angry, both from being left out and thinking our friend and I have gone completely crazy. I go inside to try to get her to come outside and sit with us, but she's too upset. We all end up sort of fighting with each other. The vibe is kind of ruined, so we just retire inside and keep on with the night. The next night, aliens came back, similar to what happened the day before. Except this time, I see large machinery fit between my neighbors' houses. I look up to the sky and I see a large crescent-shaped spaceship with a gravitational vortex around it, bending all light inside the vortex. The crescent-shaped ship bends its wings to create any shape of the moon. That night's moon was a perfect half moon. The ship took the shape of the moon and put a veil over the ship to become the moon. Finally, after 5 days of no sleep and no eating, I crash and sleep it all off, sobering up the next day. No drugs, perfectly rested beyond this point. Spend the entire next day reflecting on my experiences, thinking it was most likely the drugs. But how could we have both seen it? The vines, the bugs, the aliens. Am I crazy? Friend says she wants to write a song for Hugh. Tell her that's weird because I was thinking a lot about how to communicate with them, and music can be interpreted in all forms, like Voyager 1 Golden Record. We decide to write them a song to suggest peace. Tell her I suggest circle of fifths because aliens don't have the same way of thinking about major and minor scales that humans do. Friend tells me I don't need drugs to see them, just willingness. We do a group meditation on the back porch. I was instructed to try to focus your thoughts like a beam into space to guide them to where the thoughts come from. Wait until night, friend says. She felt Hugh again. Go out front. See a bunch of lights again. Blues and reds and such, all swooping across the ground and through the trees. I signal them with my lighter again, thinking I may be able to establish a form of communication with math. Binary signaling. 0 for no, 1 for yes. Other modes including tempo and rhythm, that is, things that could be understood by advanced entities that obviously don't speak English. They flash a giant red light and partially show themselves, but it lasted less than half a second, friend. I almost shit ourselves in fear, but are giddy with excitement. Remember, we want to write a song for them, so we start talking to them and ask them. Lights are going crazy everywhere. Actually starting to hurt my head. Friend says she hears what sounds like whistling about 10 acres away, and random lights are goading us to stand in a certain spot. Tell her I can't hear it, but I listen close and I could. No, because I've tuned guitars forever. What a 440 hertz sounds like. It was a perfect A440 hertz. Matched the whistle with my whistle. Whistled more tunes, and they whistled it back. Communication established. Spend the next 2 hours whistling a few notes at a time, running back inside to play them on the piano and map out the notes. Hear a large horn in the distance. It's another perfect day. Hear another large horn in the opposite direction. It's a perfect E. A's fifth. They're confirming the circle of fifths idea. Red light starts blinking above the clouds. Match it with my lighter. Plug in the BPM to find the tempo. Friend has a migraine from too many lights. Goes inside. I spend the remainder of the night outside with my guitar, plucking out the notes they keep whistling at me as small riffs, slowly over 5 hours assembling the song. And that's my experience. I haven't seen them since. I can plug the music into a MIDI if you guys give me just a bit. It's really pretty music. I know how it all sounds. Drugs, no sleep, no food. It's pretty obvious how it comes off. But again, I just want to know if anyone else out there has experienced what I did. Last but not least, the song. Very interesting to me, they did the whole thing in a major. And that small riff that plays the EBDC is pretty. I'm happy they showed it to me.
All right, boys, here's the plan. I hold them down, you maul them. Keep the pressure up, boys.
I forgot to mention the street and house lights. There were gravity fields around the street and porch lights that were forcing the lights to go perfectly downward and not omnidirectional, as if the light was interfering with what they were doing. And it was even stranger because it wasn't every street and house light, just some of them.
You need to spend some serious time with your wife or your marriage is fucked, bro. Also, you and friend are both schizotypal and highly suggestible.
Yeah, we're actually perfectly happy and we're 100% sober these days, so maybe you should spend 1. More time discussing the topic at hand. 2. Not LARPing as a marriage counselor on the paranormal board on 4chan. 3. Thinking you're wise enough to tell how two people are and their given relationship by an alien story on 4chan. This is why I started the OP the way I did. Don't poison my thread.
Meth head thinks we're gonna believe a meth head hallucination after being up for 5 days straight.
It's a fair point, but I made this thread on other boards too, and the overwhelming amount of responses always say the same thing. If it's hallucinations, you need to explain how more than one person can see the same thing both on and off the same drug over a period of time. No one has been able to do that yet. They just stop replying.
Never sensed any in this realm with the basic external senses. This is not to say that presence hasn't been detected, but not visual or communication of any sort. Only once, interdimensionally. A sudden urge to relax and close eyes, late at night, whilst in a chair. The event was an OBE of sorts. Something was given in a non-tangible form, which seemed like very intense vertigo. The being was a female with dark green skin who was humanoid in appearance, except for a larger head above the temples. Also, her mouth did not move when speaking, but she was moving slightly, while likely in a seated position. Alas, only the top of her head down to her clavicle could be seen, so that is all the visual of her. Her demeanor was not pleasant nor off-putting. The only other information given was that she said she was from the Andromeda Council. The choice was given to accept or decline, but acceptance would lead to physical change of the body. Acceptance was delivered, and following the acceptance came the vertigo until blackout. Please describe some physical details. Pick is not of sufficient accuracy, but gives an idea. Also, her eyes were not black. They were humanoid.
So tell me straight up, my anonymous fan. It's a fool's game to ever utter these things in public, isn't it? I should probably keep these things secret for the rest of my life, yes? And before any mentioning of meds, I'm already pursuing psychiatric help. So let's just keep this contained to discussing the topic at hand without mentions of psychology. Already on it.
Fellow experiencer here. Yes. Really? Your only bet is online experiencer communities. Mentioning this shit to anyone in public will just damage your rep in the long run. Unless it's a very close and open-minded family member you absolutely trust.
OP here, fun fact. I was around /X/ back when the alien picture shut down the site and all the crazy shit that followed it happened. Insane times. The alien that flashed the red light from the story earlier did not look like the alien picture that shut down 4chan. The alien pic definitely happened, but if it was somehow the same species, I'm probably the only person on the site who could tell you it was most likely not the same type of creature. I know most of you won't believe me, but goddamn, I hope someone here can relate. And if anyone is wondering why I came here to talk about this is the only place on the planet, including the internet, I feel both safe enough to talk about it, and the site may be the only option I'll ever have to meet someone else who could experience it. If I experienced this with a friend of mine, and she experienced it with many other people before me, then there has to be someone else out there. If it was just me, I'm crazy. But we have a law of two and more here.
The song sounds really familiar. It reminds me of an intro to a hymn they play on a church organ. Or maybe an outro theme in an animated movie.
Couldn't tell you, man. Grew up Protestant and became Catholic later. Not Cath anymore. And it wasn't quite like anything I heard in those places. But musically, I see how you draw that line. It is very hymn-like, but I think this is probably just because of how the West adopted early Greek province music. I'm sure you know, but notes are just changes in pressure, so it makes sense that a spacefaring civilization would understand them mathematically, even if they don't hear it the same way. Like us and birds can also hear sounds, but hear it differently. All sounds in the same medium nonetheless.
Who told you that if you try to take pictures of them, they would leave and not come back?
My friend did. She said she took pictures of Hugh and he didn't come back for a few months. She took it as an insult. Now understand this. I most certainly thought about photographic evidence while all of this was going on. So here was my line of reasoning as to why I didn't. 1. It wasn't worth showing the lads online when they're just average-looking lights to begin with, and you can Photoshop anything. 2. They were indeed average-looking lights from a distance. And it was strange because every light was geometrically proportional to an actual light behind it. But it wasn't an illusion because of the aforementioned camp-like bunkers. Some were spinning, and other waves of lights were covering the sky and the ground. Not only this, but as I mentioned before, I signaled to one and it signaled back. This happened several times. 3. If what my friend says was true, that I was witnessing a civilization far more advanced than ours, I tried to act as a sort of diplomat and treat them with absolute respect in hopes that they may see that we're a species that's worth interacting with, and maybe they could help us. As my friend and I sat on the mat outside, I purposely discussed with her how much needless suffering this planet has, in hopes that they were curious enough about us to hear my plea. Insulting them, as I was warned, was something I wanted to risk, but I feared the end result was too much. It just wasn't worth getting pictures of abstract lights to risk the potential benefit of making friends with something smarter than us, in nothing but earnest honesty and truth and compassion. I should also mention regarding this post that I forgot to post in the story, but I later posted it anyways. There were gravitational spheres around certain lights in the neighborhood. Most street lights and porch lights had a sphere around them, and the light from them was being pulled down, as if the light was interference with whatever they are. Considering lights was a big factor here, especially the visible spectrum of light. I never gathered a physical form with the exception of the red light flash, where I barely made out a being that was roughly 5 feet tall or so, slightly humanoid, could barely count the limbs. I figured that a camera, considering the exposure triangle works on light principles, would indeed be insulting to a light and gravity spacefaring creature. So the mechanics of light itself was a major factor here. To add to this post, I contemplated a lot on these principles when I witnessed the spaceship. There was a gravitational field around the crescent-shaped ship that seemed to bend all light around the ship, similar to the bending of light on the porch and streetlights. As I mentioned before, I study physics for fun, so as I pondered on the idea of a ship being able to travel large distances approaching the speed of light, they want to make sure it doesn't run into any random celestial body. If you travel across galaxies, the chance of your trajectory hitting something gets bigger the more you travel. Them being able to manipulate light with gravity would help us understand the imperfections of general and special relativity, because even though gravity is the weakest force, it's the only one that can bend the constant absolute light. This is the basis of Schwarzschild black holes, and it's extremely similar to what I saw with their craft. The crescent shape was foldable, so it could form to any shape of the visible moon, and a veil formed over it. Makes you think about those moon experiments where it rang like a bell. The gravitational field mentioned here is important, because if you travel across large distances throughout the universe, the chance of hitting something raises the further you go. If you aim to travel all of it, this chance approaches infinity. In order to guarantee that a ship that approaches the speed of light not only maintains its trajectory, but also guarantees that it doesn't hit anything, the ideal system would be gravity that could work like magnets, push and pull. This is the exact tech that Bob Lazar claimed to study, the gravitational propulsion of a particular ship, and after witnessing it, it makes perfect sense. If you could manipulate gravity to the point where you are attracted to your destination but repelled from all other impeding objects but also use them to maintain your course, you could go anywhere at any speed approaching infinity beyond the fourth dimension at any moment without hitting anything. Plus, it would require no fuel.
Stylish, I love
Musician of 20+ years, encounters alien intelligence, writes the blandest, most dog-shit melody of all time. I would jump off a bridge if I even improvised something so shit when I was alone in my bedroom on copious amounts of drugs.
It was whistled across the forest, and they're not my notes. I didn't write that song. Why me? Probably because I'm the only guy around who would not only be able to transpose those notes on the spot in the early morning of the night, and the willingness to do it. Didn't write the song, mate. Take it for what you will.
You're making up a bullshit story which I want to enjoy so badly, but as an actual musician, I can't. To think that an alien intelligence would whistle something so similar to what a mediocre human would come up with is impossible for me.
Maybe it evolves over time. Maybe it was just because I meditated on the idea of circle of fifths and they were confirming it. I'm a real musician, mate, and I'm sure you are too, but this isn't my song. The whistling was hard to decipher. It was faint and quiet, and it took me several tries to find the right notes as I was transposing them on my front porch, trying not to look crazy to all my neighbors who thought the dude with the guitar out at 2 a.m. lost his marbles. It was difficult, but it's what I got. The BPM is just the BPM. The song you heard was rolled on the piano roll accordingly, but that version isn't how the song goes. It's just the notes. Maybe the melody was supposed to carry differently, but I was unable to interpret that when I could only hear it piece by piece. It was more of a way of communicating with physics than it was writing Chopin.
Fair enough. I'll send you a couple different articulations of it then. I'm curious to hear something that more closely resembles it.
Sure, it was most certainly all in A major, and there is a chance it could be tuned below 440, potentially 432, but I don't buy into that 432 stuff, so feel free to adjust the frequency and it may alter the results. For further input, the first two parts, the AEA, EAE in the beginning, that was played on the horn. Everything beyond that was whistled. I suspect the horn set the tuning and the rest was composition. Who knows? I never mentioned why we whistled to begin with. It was my idea first. Once I understood on the third night they were certainly light-based in some way. They understand wave physics. I whistled at them first after they confirmed they were there and they whistled back. I whistled as close to a perfect 440 Hz A that I could, knowing if they were so capable, they would know what that is, and they whistled back. So if you're wondering why whistling was even a thing, that's just how I tried to communicate with them, and they did it back.
Lay off the LSD LOL. But you should really finalize and post that music you made. I want to hear some alien notes.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel for more green tips will appear daily. New broadcasts will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
In the last lecture, the theme was more connected with the external, exoteric aspect of spiritual science. Today we will have some comments on the inner, esoteric aspect of spiritual science. A lecture like the one given today is not designed to give instructions. Please let me stress this, for these must always be from person to person. Giving such instructions is a tremendous responsibility, and receiving them one must understand that the chosen individual really deserves one's trust. This trust is absolutely essential. Occult or inner human development will thus gradually take the individual through the stages of higher knowledge. Let me give you an outline of the essential aspects of this for information, as I said, not in the form of instructions. When someone has reached the summit of understanding, when someone is up on the mountaintop, he has an open view in all directions. That is how it is in physical existence, and also in the process of gaining insight. One doesn't have that open view when one has not yet reached the top, but is on the way up. As one climbs higher, one is able to perceive more and more, but a great deal continues to be hidden by the mountain. This image of a mountain is a good one for inner development. Everyone who seeks to ascend to levels of higher insight must start from a point that is right for him. This means people are different on this earth, also in their physical, etheric, and astral constitutions. The outer natures of a Hindu, a person from the Near East, a European, or an American descent, much more so than someone who does not have occult knowledge may think. Exercises suitable for the inner development of anyone who has a Hindu nature cannot be used in that way for a Western person. It was wrong, therefore, to transfer Oriental yoga teaching to Europe. This has done much harm. A Hindu's much softer body can be developed in a very different way than a European organism, which has grown much harder due to Western civilization. Human natures thus differ much more than you may think. An anatomist cannot tell you anything about this, but someone who is clairvoyant and looks inside knows how tremendously natures differ. We can divide present-day humanity into three types. There are still those for whom the Oriental yoga initiation is essentially right, others for whom the Gnostic Christian way is open, and finally those, and they are by far the greatest in number, for whom the way known as the Rosicrucian way from the 14th century is the right one. Please note that these ways do not lead to different insights, for once you are up on the summit, all things are the same. But the ways that lead to the summit are, and must be, different. Many things can be achieved by taking the Gnostic Christian way, and it is possible to gain the most sublime insights. But the Rosicrucian way is suitable for modern people, because they may find themselves in situations where doubts arise and trouble looms because of our present-day way of life, and these must be removed for the sake of the individuals concerned and for their work in the world. This is only possible if one goes through inner training based on the Rosicrucian method, which is the right one for the Western world. Let me present some aspects of Gnostic Christian initiation, so that you may see it as a field about which much can still be learned today. I am then going to go straight on to Rosicrucian training. We'll leave the Oriental Yoga way aside for today. The Christian way is laid down in a text that is little understood outside occult circles. The Gospel of John gives a complete outline of the right way of Christian initiation. John's Gospel is one of the most profound texts in the world, but one has to be able to read it in the right way. That is, one should not think that just reading it is enough and the right thing to do. It is a book for life. Above all, you have to understand that even the first words are not written just for people to read or for philosophical speculation. They are written for meditation. We have to have them the proper way, however, not in the usual translation. The first verses of John's Gospel must be created out of the substance of the language, so that one has not only the meaning of the sentences, but also their sound quality. The sound quality or value still matters for genuine occult life. To meditate, we enter deeply into particular formulas, sentences, or even words. But meditation, as an important means of inner development, is not a matter of entering into something we are given by our occult teacher in a philosophical or intellectual way. It is a matter of entering into the actual sound qualities. If you were to think about a sentence your teacher has given you, you could only develop thoughts about it that you already have. You are, however, to have something new. That is the important point. Sentences given for meditation open up the gates to the world of the spirit for you. They are based on experience gained over hundreds of years. Every letter, every turn of phrase is known to have an effect on the soul. You therefore need to meditate those first sentences to the letter. Correctly translated they are, "In the origin was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the God was the Word. This was in the origin with God. All things have come into being through it, and except by this, nothing of what has arisen has come into being. In it was light, and the light was the light of humanity. And the light shone into the darkness, but the darkness did not grasp it. There came to be a human being, sent by God, his name John. He came to bear witness that he might bear witness to the light, and that through him all might believe. He was not the light, but a witness of the light. For the true light that enlightens all human beings was to enter into the world. It was in the world, and the world came into being through it, but the world did not recognize it. Into individual human beings it came, but the individual human beings did not receive it. Those, however, who did receive it were able to reveal themselves through it, to be God's children. Those who put their trust in its name have come into being not out of the blood, not out of the will of the flesh, not out of the will of man, but out of God. And the Word came to be flesh, and dwelt among us, and we have heard its teaching, the teaching of the one Son of the Father, full of loving devotion and truth. If we had more time together, I could tell you many things about these first sentences. Hundreds and hundreds of people have gone through the things I am now telling you about this Christian initiation. It has become a practical experience for thousands. Let me just briefly indicate some stages of Christian initiation. The pupils will first of all be told, for weeks, months, years, you must set some time aside every morning when you let these first lines of John's Gospel come alive in your soul. Turn your attention away from everything that is going on around you during this time. You must turn blind and deaf to everything around you, and these words should arise in your soul as though you were hearing them day by day, over and over again. This exercise will first of all have a particular effect on the soul. Its magic brings it about that such a person suddenly finds his dreams becoming regular, assuming regular forms. And then a moment will come when the individual knows that he is not in a dream world. Instead, he'll know that he has a new reality around him, an imaginative astral reality. Just as in ordinary conscious awareness, we see trees and shrubs around us, so we now see the things experienced in yonder world, initially like dream images, and then more and more in a living vision seen in the waking state. The pupil will see the first 12 chapters of John's Gospel before him. After this experience, the teacher of Christian initiation will say to his pupil, "You must now prepare for the experience of the 13th chapter. Imagine a plant. This grows out of the mineral world. If it were able to think and have inner responses, it would have to say to the mineral world, I grow out of you. You may be a lower world than I am, but I could not possibly live without you. And it would have to bend down to the mineral world in gratitude and say, I thank you, stone. I owe to you my whole existence. An animal would have to speak in the same way to the plant, and man would have to bend down to the lower worlds of nature and have the same inner response. And everyone who has advanced more on the social scale should bend down before those who are below him and say, without you, I could not have life. The pupil has to practice giving himself up to this completely and do so for weeks and months. Then 2 symptoms will arise, which are the same for everyone. He will first of all experience both the external and the inner symptom as a particular fact. He will see himself as the 13th who washes the feet of the 12. In washing their feet, Christ Jesus sought to make this great truth apparent to the 12. This wondrous inner experience comes to the human being in the process of initiation. It also goes as far as external symptoms. He will experience something that feels as if he was dipping his feet in water. Nobody needs to be afraid of this. It will soon pass. When the pupil has gone this far, the teacher will come and say, now you must enter into another sphere of inner responsiveness. In life, pain and suffering come to us from all directions. You must enter into a condition where you meet all the suffering and all the pain that are coming from all directions in this world as an upright human being, so that they cannot harm you. You must stay with these things for weeks and months. Then a time comes when an astral symptom shows itself. He'll see himself in a vision of the scourging, with a sensation rather like it felt all over the body, which will pass, but the result will be that the pupil lets this feeling enter into the whole of his body. With this, he has reached a level of maturity where he is able to land upright as life plies its scourge. For the 3rd stage, he is given the instruction, you must now enter into an inner feeling of how things would be with you if you not only had to bear pain and suffering, but had scorn and derision poured over all that is most sacred to you. You must be able to stand up, using the powers of your inmost soul, and have a center in you that enables you to stand erect. A new vision will then come, where the pupil sees himself wearing the crown of thorns. The external symptom of this is a kind of headache. This indicates right down into the limbs that this great experience has come. Then comes the 4th station. The earthly body must become an outside thing for the pupil. Most people feel it is their eye. The body has to be like a piece of wood, something external. The pupil must learn to say not, I am walking through this door, but I carry the body through this door. His body must be very much an object to him. Having lived into this for weeks and months, the pupil will have a vision, an astral experience where he sees himself crucified. That is the 4th station. Stigmata will appear for a brief period during meditation as an external symptom on the hands, feet, and on the right side, not the left, as is generally thought. They indicate that this degree of development has also entered into the flesh. The stages that follow cannot be discussed, for we do not have words for them. The 5th stage is the mystic death, where the pupil will first truly have the experience of a black curtain between him and reality. He will feel lost in a way, utterly isolated as it were, until insight is gained. It is as if the world of the flesh has vanished, and something like an impenetrable black curtain lies before the eye of the soul. This is a moment everyone must go through on this way to initiation. You encounter all the truly great suffering and pain that may rest deep down in the soul, and all the evil there is in the world. This is the descent into hell. Then it seems to the pupil as if the veil tears apart and he looks into the other world. There follows the entombment, an experience where one feels at one with the planets and the seventh level of which we cannot speak, for the individual has to separate his thinking from his brain to have even an inkling of it. This is ascension into heaven. My aim in giving you this description of Christian initiation was to help you understand what it is about. It is a way full of renunciation. It may be followed quietly, attracting no notice, and there are people among you who have gone through all this. It happens between the lines in life, as it were, and the more serious it is, the less will it be visible on the outside. People must go through the Rosicrucian initiation to be armed against anything that may come from the outside. Many of the things you read about this in books are apt to make you think that the Rosicrucians are really charlatans, for that is how learned people often describe them. True Rosicrucians have recognized one another by a secret sign since the 14th century. They must never speak of the true nature of Rosicrucianism to an outsider. But from a particular point in time that came in the 19th century, it has indeed become necessary to tell people the elementary aspects of Rosicrucian initiation. Human beings are very gradually growing up and developing the maturity they will need if they are to learn something about these things. We'll not be able to go into the question today as to why it has to be like this, and why the more sublime secrets must still remain hidden. As mentioned in the previous lecture, Rosicrucian initiation is also in 7 stages. These are the Rosicrucian study, gaining imaginative perception, learning the occult script, finding the philosopher's stone, living experience of the relationship between microcosm and macrocosm, entering wholly into the macrocosm, and achieving godliness. Let me say once again that I can only give an outline and no more. Study is not the kind of learning we generally know. Instead, one has to discover that there is a way of thinking that is still fluid and real, keeping out all sensory perceptions of the world around us. Western philosophers deny the existence of such a way of thinking. They say it is only possible to think if the thought still has a residue of sensory perception in it. Those gentlemen do not know that other people have been able to do this, and they do not wish to believe it, because they themselves are unable to think in this way. Man must learn to forget everything, to leave everything aside that influences the senses from the outside, yet without being an empty vessel. This is possible if one enters wholly into a pure thought content that has no sensual connection, as given by the spiritual scientist, and reflects on the thoughts that evolve. I have shown this way in my books, writing them in such a way that one element arises from another, as in a living being, so that one thought follows organically from another. You give yourself selflessly to the thought, and an inner separation results. Anyone who wishes to move to a higher level must read things written out of the science of the spirit in this way. Anyone who does not wish to reach a higher level may read them like an ordinary book. The former is the case because higher perception takes the human being into other worlds. You are now living on the physical plan, and I say plan, not plane, for like the plan of a house, it has nothing to do with being level. You thus come to different plans, into different worlds. At first, you live here in the physical world, and then you enter into the astral imaginative world. It is a world we may describe as follows. Imagine a plant, green, with a red flower. You do special exercises that enable you not only to see what the senses see, but to perceive how a cold flame form arises from the plant, as it were. You perceive floating colors. You thus perceive spiritual entities that you cannot perceive with the ordinary senses. Everything evaporates from the surface of things and becomes the expression of purely astral events. This world is much more real than our sense-perceptible world, for the world of the senses has been created out of that world of the spirit. This physical world has condensed out of the astral world. Matter is condensed spirit to the true occultist, and we can dissolve it again. The whole of our sense-perceptible world is condensed astral reality. Behind this astral world is yet another world which may best be described by showing you how human beings come to gain living experience of it. When someone does the exercises I have described in my books, his dreams will first of all become regular. Try and enter into the nature of dreams. What is a dream? Let me give you some examples. They are taken from life, for I do not speak of other things. Someone has dreamt he has caught a tree frog, and then finds he has taken hold of a corner of his bed covers. The dream symbolized the occurrence. Another example is someone dreaming that he's in a dark, musty hole of a cellar full of spider webs. He wakes up with a headache. Some dreams may involve high drama. A student is standing at the door of the lecture theatre. Another one comes in and provokes him, and a duel is fought with pistols. The shot rings out and the chair next to the bed has fallen over. This minor incident has come to symbolic expression in the whole dramatic story of the dream. A farmer's wife dreams she's going to town and entering a church where the priest's sermon is of sublime things. Just when it gets really sublime, the priest begins to change. It looks as if he is growing wings, and then he suddenly begins to crow. At that moment, the farmer's wife wakes up, and the cock is crowing outside. The cock's crow has been transformed and taken symbolic form in the dream. Dreams are thus highly creative. Everything is chaotic in them, but life is given to this world, and everything becomes harmonious and regular if you gain the certainty up to a point that this represents a reality. This is how it first shows itself, and later one takes things perceived in the world of dreams across into everyday life. Something develops which we may call continuity of conscious awareness. Human beings also have dreamless sleep. The Rosicrucian pupil next learns to perceive entities and events around himself in a sleep state. The revelations of the spirit world sound forth from the darkness of dreamless sleep. In the Pythagorean schools, this was called the world of the music of the spheres. The world of the spirit sounds forth. If you really want to hear something about the Deva-chan, this must be such that it is described to you as a world of sound. Goethe, who had this degree of Rosicrucian initiation, knew of this. The sun proclaims its old devotion in rival song with brother spheres. That is either nonsense or a higher truth. The physical sun does not resound, but the spirit of the sun is a real, resounding entity. Goethe stayed with the metaphor, for in Part 2 of Faust, he wrote, "Resounding now for ears of spirit, the new day is already being born." He wrote like that because the music of the spheres of which the Pythagoreans spoke was a reality to him. I can only refer to these things briefly. All things will speak to us, and a new revelation will come forth. Those are the stages the Rosicrucian pupil can reach by means of exercises. The worlds are always completely different, and someone who only knows the physical world can have no idea of the things one can learn in other worlds. One thing is the same for all worlds, however, and that is logical thinking. Our perceptions are entirely different in the astral and in the Devachanic world, but the laws of thinking are the same in all three worlds. A Rosicrucian pupil must therefore first learn this way of thinking, so that he may keep to the proper path and not lose his way. The second stage consists of gaining imaginative perception. I can only tell you a few things that should explain what is meant by this. When you see a tear rolling down a cheek, you conclude that the soul is filled with sadness. When you see a cheerful face, you conclude that the soul is cheerful. You draw these conclusions in relation to people. When you want to ascend to imaginative perception, you must do this in relation to the whole world. The life of plants, animals, and stones should express the physiognomy of the world's soul for you. Some things must be like our cheerfulness, other things like tears wept by the earth's spirit. This must become very real to the person, and much can be experienced in this way. The secret of the Holy Grail, the ideal of medieval Rosicrucian pupils, is connected with this. Let us take an example. The Rosicrucian pupil would meet his teacher, who would give him an exercise to do. I am going to put this in the form of a dialogue, though it has never been spoken dialogue. But what it conveys was practiced and became a living experience. It is entirely true and absolutely correct in every detail. The pupil would come to his teacher, who would say to him, "Look at the plant. It extends its root into the soil. It grows upwards, opening its calyx at the top. And in there are its organs of fertilization and reproduction. Chastely and nobly, and in purity, it lets the sun's ray kiss it. The light, the sacred lance of love, which penetrates the calyx as a sunbeam and calls forth the potential that lies in the plant's organs of fertilization. You would have the wrong idea if, in comparing the plant with a human being, you were to think that the root is the head and the flower is the lower part. Man is an inverted plant. The occultist thus sees the inverted plant in man and the inverted human being in the plant, with the animal between the two. Look at the plant. It is the arm of the cross that goes down. The animal is the horizontal arm, and man, the vertical arm. That is the original significance of the cross. It is the symbol for plants, animals, and man, as three realms of nature. Plato therefore wrote that the world's soul was crucified on the world's body, and the teacher would go on to say to the pupil, "Look at the human being in the flesh. What is this human flesh? Compare it with the matter contained in a plant. Plant matter is chaste and pure. Human flesh is full of passion and desire. Man is higher up on the evolutional scale, but does this also mean that he has taken in passion and desire?" And the occult pupil would begin to intuit a future human being whose flesh would be pure and chaste again, like the chaste calyx of a flower that holds out its organs of fertilization to the sunbeam's sacred lance of love. Then his productive powers would reach out to the spirit, just as today the plant reaches out to the lance of love, to the light. Those who sought to achieve this went through a transformation of the flesh, and so the pupil was presented with the great ideal of the human being, who one day will be as pure and chaste as the plant. This ideal is called the Holy Grail. It is one of the images that speak to the heart and the whole soul. The pupil was able to rise higher, not through thoughts, but through images that influence the whole soul, captivating the heart, mind, and soul. Only then can imaginative perception be achieved. The third level involves learning the occult script. Something exists in this world, which in occult life is called the vortex. It is to be found everywhere in nature and in the world of the spirit. Imagine you are looking up to the Orion Nebula, which is a distinctive spiral. If you were a seer, you would see that a vortex emerges like a figure 6, with a second vortex that is darker. The two intertwine. This also occurs in the world of the spirit. We live in the age that follows the great Atlantean flood. Before that, our earliest ancestors were human beings of a very different kind. People imagine today that in those times, human beings were just as they are now. But the physical conditions were completely different then. Atlantis was always in darkness, enveloped in masses of dense fog. It is important for you to know this. Old German mythology holds memories of Niflheim and Nibelungs. Under those conditions, the human constitution was very different. The Atlanteans also had a completely different culture. You might get an idea of this if I were to give you details of the way people heard articulated sounds in all things at that time. There were no moral laws. If someone wanted to know how to relate to a neighbor, he could not appeal to some authority or other. He would listen to the waves, and then he would know. It was a culture of which no trace seems to remain. It perished. When did this happen? We can see that in the heavens. About 8 centuries before Christ was born, the sun rose in the Ram. It takes about 2160 years to move through a sign of the zodiac. The sun moved into the sign of the Ram, or the Lamb, about 800 years before Christ. People felt the new constellation had brought them the new fruitfulness of spring, something new and good. We see from this that they felt the lamb or the ram to be important. Many things point to this, among them the legend of the Argonauts, in which the golden fleece plays such a role. The Christ himself is called the Lamb of God. The lamb was the symbol for offering veneration. Before that, the sun had been in the sign of the bull, hence the veneration of the bull in Egyptian and Persian culture. Even earlier, the sun passed through the sign of the twins. In accord with this, duality played a great role in the Persian teachings of Hormuzd and Ahriman. Traces of this still persisted in ancient Germanic culture. Before that, the sun was passing through Cancer. This was the period that followed the Atlantean flood. A vortex had occurred in the realm of the spirit. This constellation with the occult sign of Cancer can still be seen in the calendar today. Many such signs are known to man. In reality, this is nothing but a recreation of the primal forces of nature. If you train your heart and mind to understand the occult signs, you will steel your will with this occult script. You get to know the ways of the spirits that are behind nature. A faint echo remains in symbolic signs, such as the pentagram and hexagram. One occult sign you often read about is the swastika. The strange explanations given for it are quite unbelievable. In reality, it is nothing but the sign for the astral sense organs, the wheels, or lotus flowers, several of which are potentially present in the astral body, in the heart, the larynx, and between the eyebrows. Astral vision begins when the last named of these wheels begins to turn. The swastika is the sign for this astral organ of perception. The fourth level is called preparing the Philosopher's Stone, and this is a reality. At the end of the 18th century, someone who had got hold of something, but not exactly the right idea, put quite a good description of the Philosopher's Stone in a journal. He actually did not know himself how good it was. At that time, a number of things from the occult school were wrongly made public, and so someone also described the Philosopher's Stone. This is actually something familiar to everyone, and many people handle it daily without having an idea. To help you see what this is about, Follow me in a brief line of thought. Consider human breathing. We inhale oxygen, which changes our blue blood to red, and we exhale carbon dioxide, which means we are all the time exhaling poisonous matter. Plants, on the other hand, take up the carbon dioxide exhaled by humans and animals and retain the carbon to build up their bodies. They release the oxygen so that humans can inhale it again. This is a cycle. Occultists attached great importance to this process. If you dig up a plant form that has become coal today, you can see that the plant built up its body of carbon. Humans take in oxygen, changing blue blood into red. Plants take in carbon dioxide and return the oxygen which humans then take in again. Let us try and see what happens when the breathing process is regulated in a particular way in Rosicrucian training. The way in which it is done can only be passed on from person to person, but it is possible to speak of the effect. A steady drip will hollow the stone, as the saying goes, and that applies to the process I am now describing. The occult pupil is instructed by his teacher to do his breathing exercises out of the spirit. It is an instruction, therefore, to regulate his breathing process in a particular way, and this makes it possible for the human mind to expand a little as time goes on. It is something of which human beings normally know nothing, and has to do with something that happens in the plant. The plant now becomes at one with him. Normally, human beings exhale carbon dioxide and take in oxygen. The pupil must bring this to mind consciously. In his breathing, he consciously experiences the change from carbon to oxygen, blue blood to red blood. He learns to do something in himself that is normally left to the plant. He will then be able to build up his own body. He learns to do so by means of regular breathing. This, then, is a real process in which the human being learns to purify his flesh, also at the physical level. The alchemy of the human body lies in this. The human being is transformed into the vehicle for a pure, chaste incarnation that may be compared to a plant. The pupil is aware of something sublime, light and bright. He knows he only had to go through the flesh. That is the transformation of coal into diamond. You'll now understand the significance of bringing rhythm into the breathing in Rosicrucian training, and know what was meant by the philosopher's stone. The regulated breathing process is the way to the philosopher's stone. I'm only touching on things lightly, but you'll understand that something profound lies behind the search for the philosopher's stone, something connected with the transformation of the whole of mankind, so that human beings will be different from the way they are today, they and the whole earth. That is how great and strong and firm, morally great, the powers of soul must be if man is to make the flesh, too, part of the process of redemption. We also have to redeem everything that exists around us, all creation. The fifth level is to enter deeply into the relationship between microcosm and macrocosm. A great occultist of medieval times, someone we must first learn to read, used a beautiful image to show the relationship between macrocosm and microcosm. Paracelsus said, "You see there the individual letters. Man is the word made up of the letters." Paracelsus referred to a cholera patient as arsenicus, for example, for the powers active in him are the same as those active in arsenic. But there is more. When someone concentrates really hard on a particular part inside him, the point between the eyebrows, this, of course, is only a reference point, he will have a particular experience in which he is taken into the inner events of the great world. These correspond to the part which in the human microcosm lies between the eyes. And so the correspondence between macrocosm and microcosm has to be experienced bit by bit. Entering deeply into his inner life, the pupil must get to know the outside world. At the 6th and 7th levels, the Rosicrucian pupil comes to be at one with the whole world. He gains true knowledge of the outside world, and his feelings and his whole soul become one with the outside world to the same degree. This is the condition known as godliness. The earth's body is then his body, and the pupil achieves the stage known as being at one with the universe. It is a long road along one particular path. Those who have gone through it become messengers of the spiritual world, speaking from real experience. It is a road anyone can follow today, certainly in principle. It will take a long time for some and a shorter time for others. One of the best theosophists, the late Subaru, said about the time needed, which people ask about so often. It is true that one person needed 70 incarnations, another 7 incarnations, someone else again, 70 years or perhaps 7 years. There have been people who achieved it in 7 months, and some in just 7 days, depending on their karma from former lives on Earth. Setting out on the road, one must be patient and persevere, knowing that one will be exposed to great dangers unless one has first gone through character training. Let me give you an analogy. Take a green liquid produced by mixing blue and yellow. You can separate the blue from the yellow by using a chemical agent. Before that, the individual properties of the two solutions were not apparent. Now they show those properties, and that is how it is with the human being. High and low qualities are mixed. The lower ones are prevented from taking full effect because the higher ones have been added. If you now separate the two by doing the exercises, you may find that someone who until now was more or less bearable grows malicious and cunning, and also shows a whole lot of other bad characteristics. This is something you have to understand. The danger can definitely be prevented by doing specific preliminary exercises that establish a particular inner morality full of character. The pupil must first learn to keep strict control of his thoughts. He must practice making one thought the focus of his inner life for a long period. The more intensely so, the better. He must stick with it and let all thoughts follow from it. This exercise must be done for at least 5 minutes every day. The more the better, but one should not overdo it. It is necessary to be able to take initiative in one's actions. This is done by the pupil doing one particular thing on his own initiative every day. It may be something quite small and insignificant, for instance, watering one's flowers. After a time, one takes up another initiative. One has to gain mastery over pleasure and pain. There must be no more of being on top of the world one moment and down in the dumps the next. This mastery will make you more subtly receptive, but you yourself must be the master, not your inner responses. There is a need to be positive. A Persian legend about Christ Jesus will show you what is meant. The Christ was walking with some of his disciples. A dead, partly decomposed dog was lying by the roadside. The disciples turned away and said, "How horrible that creature is." The Christ stopped, however, and said, "Look how beautiful the animal's teeth are." You can look for and find something beautiful in the ugliest things, something great in the smallest of things. One must always look for the positive side. One has to learn to be completely unbiased towards anything new, absence of bias to the highest degree. People tend to say, "I've never heard of this before, seen this before. I don't believe it." We have to learn in the widest possible sense never to say something is impossible. There should be a place in our hearts where one allows it to be possible, say, that the church tower is at an angle, if someone says it is at an angle. We should at least consider it to be possible if we hear such a thing. The sixth level consists in bringing the 5 qualities mentioned above into harmony. The pupil will then have developed such inner strength that he will be protected from anything occult training might otherwise do to him. It would be wrong to set limits to occult training and say, all I want is the ethical value. Anyone wishing to enter into the higher worlds must follow the indicated route. The road to the most sublime insights is also the way to the greatest compassion. We must gain such compassion from insight, not with phrases. When someone has broken a leg, all the people standing around full of compassion will be of no use. Only the one individual who knows what to do and does it properly. Merely preaching theosophy is like standing in front of the stove and saying, it is your duty to get the room warm. And it is the same if you tell people to practice brotherly love. Just as you have to put wood in the stove and put a match to it, so you have to give people what they need if their souls are to unite in one great brotherhood, and that is insight. True insight is the fuel for the great brotherly union among human beings. Today, we have the age of materialism, and because of this, people have gone their separate ways.
Ever wondered why you feel drained after a simple conversation with certain people? You stand at the threshold of 2 realms, the visible world where ordinary eyes perceive only what is obvious, and the unseen world where your true essence operates with undeniable force. In the midst of daily interactions, as you encounter those who dwell solely in the physical, those we might call muggles, who are unaware or disconnected from the mystical and energetic dimensions of life, you are constantly aware of the energetic undercurrents that they cannot fathom. Muggles, in their innocence or ignorance, are bound by the limitations of the material world, unable to perceive or understand the deeper spiritual currents that shape our existence. This is precisely why maintaining high vibrations around them is crucial. Their lower energetic states can easily pull you down, draining your energy and dimming your light if you're not vigilant. But you, as a chosen one, are not just a participant in this reality. You are its master, holding the reins of unseen powers. The power within you is not just real, it is the very force that shapes your world. The question is not if you can wield it, but how you will harness it to command both realms with undeniable authority. The first way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is to reflect their energy back. Consider yourself in a crowded subway, the walls closing in with the weight of frustration and anger from those around you. The air is dense with their unspoken fears, a palpable force seeking to latch onto you, to drain the essence of your calm. But instead of absorbing their negativity, you become a mirror, an obsidian shield of ancient power. This is no ordinary mirror. It's forged from the darkest depths, where light and shadow merge into a protective force that deflects all that seeks to harm you. In that moment, as the storm of emotions rages around you, you remain untouched, your spirit unyielding. Their projected fears and anger bounce back, unable to penetrate your protective barrier. You stand tall and serene, a beacon of unwavering energy in a sea of turmoil. The negativity that once sought to engulf you is now powerless, reflected away by your inner strength. The obsidian mirror is your silent guardian, transforming their chaos into nothing more than fleeting shadows that pass by without consequence. You've mastered the art of protection, turning their energies back upon themselves, leaving them to grapple with their own darkness while you remain centered and unshaken. As the subway continues its relentless journey, You are the still point in the turning world, untouchable, a force unto yourself. This is the power you wield, the mastery you possess, reflecting the world's chaos back into the void from which it came, ensuring your light remains undimmed, your vibrations high and pure. The obsidian mirror is not just a metaphor. It is a symbol of your dominion over energies that dare to challenge your serenity. The second way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by transmuting dark energies. You're at a tense family dinner, where old grudges and unspoken resentments fester beneath every word. The air is thick with bitterness, each breath laden with the weight of unresolved conflict. Yet, as the tension mounts, you do not falter. Instead, you close your eyes, and within the depths of your heart, you summon a golden light. This is no ordinary light. It is the essence of the sun itself, an alchemical force that transforms everything it touches. As this light begins to expand, it fills your entire being, then reaches out, engulfing the room in its radiant warmth. The dark energies, those suffocating clouds of negativity, begin to melt away, unable to withstand the purifying power of the sun's energy. The resentments that once threatened to poison the atmosphere are dissolved, transmuted into understanding and peace. You are the alchemist at the table, turning the lead of human pettiness into the gold of compassion and calm. By the time you open your eyes, the transformation is complete. The once hostile conversation has softened. The tension evaporated like morning mist under the sun's first rays. Your golden light has reshaped the energy of the room, bending it to your will, leaving behind a serene calm where conflict once reigned. The sun's energy flows through you, turning darkness into light, discord into harmony. You have not just survived the storm, you have transformed it, proving that your power lies not in resistance, but in the divine ability to transmute even the darkest energies into something pure and healing. This is your gift, your undeniable power to shape the world around you through the sheer force of your inner light. The third way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by harnessing your kundalini energy in the dance of the serpent. In a workplace teeming with competition and envy, where every glance carries the weight of hidden agendas, you sense the pressure of others trying to pull you down. But instead of succumbing to their lower vibrations, you activate a force within you that is both ancient and divine. Deep within, at the base of your spine, the serpent of Kundalini energy awakens, coiled and ready to rise. As this serpent ascends through your chakras, a current of intense divine energy floods your being. Your body tingles with the raw power of the universe, as the serpent's ascent ignites each energy center within you. This isn't just a rise of energy, it's a transformation. The serpent's dance elevates your vibrations to a plane where the petty games of the envious can no longer reach you. A shimmering aura of invincibility forms around you, an impenetrable shield that deflects all attempts to undermine you. Your colleagues, once so eager to see you falter, now find themselves in awe of the force you've become. Their efforts to diminish your light fall flat, unable to penetrate the elevated state you've achieved. The Kundalini serpent, imbued with ancient mystical energy, transcends the limitations of the physical world, placing you in a realm where their lowly energies cannot touch you. You've tapped into a power that few can comprehend, a force that turns the tides in your favor and leaves your challengers bewildered and powerless. This is not just survival, this is mastery. By harnessing the Kundalini energy, you've transformed yourself into a being of untouchable power, a true embodiment of divine strength. The serpent's rise within you is a testament to your unwavering control, a dance that propels you beyond the reach of those who would dare to bring you down. The fourth way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by calling upon the shield of the ancients, invoking the power of your ancestral lineage. When you find yourself in a hostile environment, where every word drips with judgment and every glance cuts with misunderstanding, you do not retreat. Instead, you summon the ancient ones who have walked this earth before you. Mentally, you reach out across time and space, calling upon the wisdom and strength of your ancestors, those who have conquered battles far greater than this. As their spirits answer your call, you feel their presence envelop you, an invisible yet palpable force that encircles your being. This is no ordinary shield. It is a fortress forged from the spiritual power of your lineage, each ancestor contributing a layer of protection, turning you into an impenetrable stronghold of light. Their voices, a chorus of wisdom and resilience, guide you, elevating your vibration to a realm where the hostility around you becomes nothing more than distant noise. The energy of those who seek to harm you dissipates, powerless against the might of your ancestral shield. They may sense something, an intangible force that they cannot comprehend, but they will never be able to breach it. Your lineage, a lineage of warriors, healers, and sages, stands with you, amplifying your strength and fortifying your spirit. This shield is not just protection, it is a declaration of your divine heritage, a reminder that you are never alone in your battles. You walk through that hostile environment untouched, your vibrations soaring above the low frequencies that seek to drag you down. The power of your ancestors flows through you, an unbroken chain of light and strength that renders you invincible. This is your inheritance, a shield forged by the hands of the Ancient Ones, turning you into a beacon of resilience and divine power. The fifth way to maintain high vibrations around Muggles is by reclaiming your voice through the siren song. In social circles where louder, more dominant energies attempt to drown you out, you harness a power known only to the few, your voice. But this is not just any voice. It is the embodiment of an ancient melody, a siren's song that resonates with the very frequencies of the universe itself. You begin to hum softly, a tune passed down through the ages, known to mystics and seers who understood the secret language of sound. As the melody flows from you, it is not mere sound. It is a vibrational force, a tool that harmonizes the discordant energies around you. The room begins to shift, the chaotic noise fading as the power of your song weaves through the air, commanding silence, commanding respect. People who once sought to overpower you with their noise find themselves inexplicably drawn to your voice, their attention captured by the invisible threads of energy that your song spins. Your voice, now amplified by the ancient chant, slices through the chaos like a blade of pure light, elevating the collective energy of the room. The siren song you sing is more than a melody. It is an incantation, a spell that realigns the energies around you, bending them to your will. This is the secret weapon of those who understand the true power of sound, the ability to shift the atmosphere with nothing more than a few notes. In that moment, you reclaim your voice, not just as a means of expression, but as a powerful tool of transformation. The ancient song you carry within you is a key to unlocking the energy of any space, turning the tide in your favor and ensuring that your vibration remains high, untouchable, and sovereign. You are not just heard, you are revered, your voice an echo of the divine, reverberating through the cosmos. The sixth way to maintain high vibrations around Muggles is by donning the astral cloak, rendering yourself invisible to negative forces. When you find yourself targeted by the dark intentions of others, where every look feels like an attempt to siphon your energy, you mentally reach out to the cosmos and pull forth the astral cloak, a garment woven from the very fabric of the universe. This is no ordinary cloak. It is crafted from stardust, an ethereal material that binds you to the infinite reaches of the cosmos. As the tension around you thickens, you become a ghost, an untouchable entity moving through the room unseen and unfazed by the negativity swirling around you. The astral cloak wraps around your being, a shimmering veil that distorts the energy others direct toward you. Their negative intentions slide off you like raindrops on a lotus leaf, unable to find purchase in your protected space. You are there, yet you are not. You exist in a dimension just out of their reach. Your presence a mere whisper that leaves them confused and powerless. As you navigate through the hostile environment, your energy remains untouched, preserved in its purest form. The negative forces that sought to ensnare you find nothing to grasp, their efforts dissipating into the ether. You emerge from the encounter with your vibration not only intact, but elevated, having danced with the shadows and come out unscathed. The astral cloak is more than just a shield. It is a connection to the farthest corners of the universe, a reminder that you are not bound by the limitations of this earthly plane. You leave the space with only a faint trace of your presence, a ghostly echo that confounds those who sought to harm you. They may wonder what happened, why their attempts fell flat, but they will never know. You have mastered the art of becoming untouchable, your vibrations soaring beyond their grasp, cloaked in the limitless power of the stars. The seventh way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by embracing the dance of the phoenix, rising from emotional ashes with an unyielding force. In the wake of a devastating personal loss, you find yourself encircled by those who either wallow in pity for you or, more insidiously, feed off your grief, seeking to drag you further into the depths of despair. But you are not one to be consumed by such darkness. Instead, you summon the ancient power within and transform into the phoenix, the eternal symbol of regeneration and rebirth. As the weight of your pain presses down on you, the flames of transformation ignite, fueled by divine fire. These are no ordinary flames. They are an eternal blaze, a force of cosmic origin that incinerates the very essence of negativity. With each mental flap of your wings, the flames grow, rising higher and higher, burning away the sorrow, the grief, the malicious energies that seek to tether you to the ashes. You do not just survive this inferno, you thrive in it. As the flames consume the last remnants of your pain, you rise, more powerful and radiant than ever before. The muggles who once sought to siphon your energy, who mistook your suffering for weakness, now stand in awe as you emerge from the ashes, untouchable and reborn. The Phoenix's dance is your declaration to the universe that no force of negativity can ever truly destroy you. Instead, it only serves to refine you, to elevate you to greater heights of power and resilience. The divine fire that fuels your transformation ensures that you are not merely surviving the emotional onslaught, you are transcending it. You leave the encounter not as the person you were, but as a force of nature, a living embodiment of the Phoenix, with vibrations that soar beyond the reach of those who would dare to bring you down. You are unstoppable, eternal, a beacon of divine power rising from the ashes of anything that dares to challenge you. The eighth way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by wielding the Oracle's vision, seeing beyond the physical realm with an unerring clarity. When you find yourself in a room thick with deception, where every word spoken is laced with hidden agendas, and every glance carries the weight of manipulation, you don't merely rely on what your eyes perceive. You close them, shutting out the physical distractions, and activate your inner vision, a vision granted by the divine, sharper and more piercing than any mortal sight. As you slip into this deeper sight, the world around you transforms. The lies and falsehoods of others reveal themselves as dark, tangled webs, spun with the intent to ensnare and deceive. But these webs are no match for the light of your oracle's vision. You see through them, their complexity unraveling into simplicity under your gaze. The intentions behind the facades, the true emotions masked by smiles, are laid bare before you, like shadows exposed to the sun. Armed with this divine sight, you navigate the treacherous landscape with precision, avoiding the traps laid out for you with a grace that leaves others bewildered. Where they see only what is presented to them, you perceive the truth, the energetic undercurrents that flow beneath the surface of every interaction. Your vibrations remain high, untouchable by the deceit that surrounds you, because you are no longer bound by the illusions of the physical world. This oracle's vision is not just a gift, it is a shield, a weapon, a compass that guides you through the murkiest of situations with unwavering accuracy. Those who seek to manipulate or deceive you find themselves outmatched, unable to comprehend how you so effortlessly sidestep their traps. You are not just surviving in this realm of shadows, you are thriving, empowered by a vision that transcends the physical, allowing you to maintain your sovereignty, your purity, your unmatched vibrational frequency. The ninth way to maintain high vibrations around muggles is by tuning into the echo of eternity, aligning yourself with the cosmic pulse that governs all existence. When you find yourself in the midst of chaos, where the noise of the world threatens to drown out your inner peace, you do not allow yourself to be consumed. Instead, you close your eyes and turn your focus inward, seeking out the hum of the universe, the echo of eternity that resonates beneath the surface of all things. As you tune into this cosmic rhythm, the cacophony around you begins to fade, its power over you dissolving like mist under the morning sun. This pulse is not just a sound, it is the heartbeat of the universe itself, a timeless rhythm that transcends the limitations of the physical world and connects you to the infinite. With each beat, your spirit aligns more closely with this eternal cadence, and you feel your vibrations rise naturally, effortlessly, as you harmonize with the universe's own frequency. The chaos that once threatened to overwhelm you becomes nothing more than a distant memory, a fading echo lost in the vastness of the cosmos. Your being, now attuned to the pulse of eternity, stands unshaken, a pillar of serenity in a world of noise. This connection to the cosmic heartbeat not only elevates your vibrations, but also reinforces your place within the grand scheme of existence, reminding you that you are more than the sum of your earthly experiences. You are in sync with the universe itself, and through this connection, you transcend the petty disturbances of the physical world. The echo of eternity reverberates through your soul, imbuing you with a power that is both ancient and infinite, ensuring that you remain untouchable by the chaotic energies of those around you. You are the embodiment of the cosmic pulse, a living testament to the harmony that exists beyond the reach of mortal turmoil. As you walk between these two worlds, one seen and one unseen, you must remember that you are not confined by the limitations of the muggles who surround you. You possess ancient wisdom, forged in the fires of 1,000 lifetimes, and mystical tools that connect you to the very fabric of the universe. Every step you take is a testament to the power within you, a power that far surpasses the mundane, tethering you to the eternal forces that few can comprehend. Whether it's in a crowded room where energy seeks to drain you, or in moments of solitude where the weight of the world feels unbearable, you are equipped with the means to rise above. The mastery of these ways ensures that your vibrations remain untouchable, elevating you to a place where darkness cannot reach. You are a beacon of light, steadfast in a world that often feels shrouded in shadow, and it is your destiny as a chosen one to wield this power with both grace and unyielding strength. Let no force, no matter how dark, ever dim your light. Your path is one of sovereignty and resilience, a path that not only illuminates your own way, but also serves as a guiding star for others lost in the night. Share your stories, your triumphs over the shadows, and let your voice echo through the corridors of time. In doing so, you fortify not just your spirit, but the spirits of those who walk beside you, between the worlds of the seen and unseen. Your legacy is one of power and light. Embrace it, and let the world see the true extent of your radiance.
The situation at Göbekli Tepe is far more serious and concerning than I had imagined. In fact, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, this is it. I recently made a video exposing that one of the world's oldest and arguably the most mysterious ancient site on Earth has been essentially infiltrated by powerful outside forces, which are now inexplicably deferring a full excavation of Göbekli Tepe to future generations, bizarrely stating that they will be focusing on tourism and conservation rather than large-scale excavations as done in all the years prior, going as far as to say that a complete excavation of this profound site is now projected to be as far away as 150 years down the road, which of course makes absolutely no sense. Why on earth would they pull back excavation efforts when Göbekli Tepe is estimated to only be 5% excavated? That's right, somewhere between 90 to 95% is still buried and waiting to be discovered. Again, this makes no logical sense considering that the gravity of this site and just how many unanswered questions we have. I mean, we literally have no idea who built it or why. And the site itself is not even supposed to exist based on the historical time frame of human civilizations that we were all taught in school. And it turns out that the video I made where I raised questions involving the progress of excavations, or lack thereof, created a firestorm among the powers that be within Turkey, And it turns out that they are very upset. In fact, the director of excavations of Göbekli Tepe has called for me to be sanctioned, essentially banned from the site itself or potentially the entire country of Turkey. And I'll show you exactly what he said in a moment, along with a number of other alarming details. But it's like that saying, you get the most flack when you're doing the hardest. So this motivated me to investigate further into the number of multiple controversies that I discussed in my prior video. And that is how I uncovered that the situation is far more serious than I had anticipated. Now, let me start off by discussing the person who is advocating for me to be sanctioned. The director of excavations at Göbekli Tepe is a man by the name of Dr. Necmi Karul, who is a high-level professor within Turkey and is the head of prehistory at Istanbul University. And as I've been told, he has strong political connections. In fact, he is the literal boss of dozens of archaeological excavations throughout Turkey. He is at the helm of anything prehistory related within the country. And Dr. Karul became aware of my video where I shared the unacceptable lack of excavations, the destruction of ancient ruins, the planting of trees over ancient ruins, which are now prohibiting a full excavation, and also that I exposed the WEF affiliation in regards to control of this site. And he went to the media and said a variety of things. Firstly, he falsely misquoted me as saying that excavations had stopped or were otherwise suspended at Göbekli Tepe. In fact, let me play a short 30-second clip so you can hear exactly what I said in my prior video. And although there are still archaeologists working on the site of Göbekli Tepe today, I'm not saying that there are zero excavations taking place. However, the scope is incredibly limited, hence why that 5% figure is more or less the same. The reality is that any meaningful, large-scale dig of the remaining 14 circular enclosures that hold up a majority of the potentially 128 remaining pillars that remain hidden underground is currently at an indefinite standstill. Let that sink in. And what I said is the truth, and it comes straight from them. They've outright declared that full-scale excavations will be left for future generations and with a potential 150-year time frame. They very clearly stated that the focus at Göbekli Tepe is now around tourism and conservation of the site rather than excavations. Here is a quote from Dr. Karul. Plans for the near future in Göbekli Tepe were made on the conservation and consolidation of existing areas rather than further excavations. And this was also stated by Dr. Lee Clare, who's head of fieldwork and research at Göbekli Tepe, who stressed that future digs will be limited in contrast to the large-scale excavations of years past. In fact, I communicated with him directly on X, where I very specifically asked him to clarify that as of right now, there is no plan to fully excavate Göbekli Tepe for the indefinite future. And he said yes. And he went on to say that he doesn't even think that the site should be fully excavated. And get this, he bizarrely made an excuse that they should wait for technological advances in the future that would allow for less destructive excavation methods. But this is complete and total gaslighting. It's 2024, and we absolutely have the ability to safely unearth the remaining T-pillars at this site. I mean, think about it. What alleged future technology will allow us to dig up these pillars any differently? We already have pressure washers and paintbrushes. Yes, paintbrushes which are used by archaeologists around the world to safely excavate. We also have ground-penetrating radar that allows us to see what we are digging into beforehand. So, are we going to pretend that there's going to be a miraculous new invention of pickaxes or shovels or something? And by the way, if he insists that they are continuing to excavate the site today as he has stated, well then he is essentially admitting that they're doing so right now with destructive methods. So, which is it? And that is why I don't buy it at all. This is gaslighting. But regardless, it is a matter of fact that as of today, they are not going to fully excavate Göbekli Tepe in any of our lifetimes, which is my entire point. This is entirely unacceptable. To not excavate this site is a borderline crime against humanity. It is literally the most important archaeological discovery on Earth, and it is the one site above all else that requires immediate excavation. More than 90% of it is buried in the earth waiting discovery, and who knows what unanswered questions about our lost past are waiting to be dug up here. This site consists of approximately 200 pillars, and only 72 of them have been unearthed. And all of them are telling us a story with their various depictions, which means that there are an estimated 128 pillars still buried here. And by the way, here is something important that you should also know, which is that just days ago, a peer-reviewed study was published on Göbekli Tepe suggesting that it could be the world's oldest lunar solar calendar, which raises many questions involving the possibility that this site was indeed a time capsule that was purposely buried that documented a cataclysmic event that wiped out human civilization 11,600 years ago and was buried so it could be preserved for the future in order to warn us for the next one. And regardless of whether that's the case or not, we will not know what it is until it is further excavated. And do you want to hear another wild possibility which I shared on social media, which made archaeologists go totally berserk? If you go to the Old Testament, in Genesis 8:20, it states that after Noah emerged from the ark after the great flood, he built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered their sacrifice on the altar. Well, what's wild is that many have suggested that Noah's Ark may have rested on Mount Ararat, which is in Turkey, and obviously Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey as well. So with that, also consider that the pillars of Göbekli Tepe almost entirely are made up of various birds and animals. Is it possible that this site is Noah's altar? I know that will sound very far-fetched to many people, but it's important to remember that all myths and legends originate from some truth. And although there may not have been a flood that reached above all the mountains on Earth, nor would there be an ark that physically housed every animal, it's not unreasonable to think that there was a devastating flood of people that took refuge with animals and survived it, especially considering the 11,600-year dating of Göbekli Tepe that coincides with substantial global sea level rise at that same exact period of time. And regardless of whether Göbekli Tepe was a calendar or an altar built by Noah, or something totally unrelated, we simply do not know what it is today, and we will never know what it is until it is appropriately excavated. Do we all understand what I'm saying? To not fully excavate this site for hundreds of years and save it for future generations is insanity. And it's either because of mismanagement, incompetence, or corruption. Because the fact that it's remained at only 5% excavated for at least the last 7 years says it all. But before I could even ask Dr. Lee Clare more questions involving excavations, he inexplicably blocked me, despite the fact that I was totally polite and professional with him. Why would he do that? Why not be transparent? But going back to his boss, Dr. Nekni Karul, and him addressing my video, he had more things to say. One of which involved the massive controversy of planting hundreds of trees on and around the site of Göbekli Tepe. In fact, let me go ahead and play a 30-second clip of what I said in my prior video on that. And by the way, here's a question. When exactly were these two orchards of trees, which are located in the midst of ruins of Göbekli Tepe, when were they planted? Because I found an aerial photograph from 2004, and as you can see, these two sets of orchards were not there at this time as compared to a more recent photo. Do any ancient ruins lie underneath these orchards? I mean, that is a sincere question, as I do not know if that is the case or not. All I did was ask a sincere yet very important question. And after that video, I got in touch with an archaeologist who physically conducted excavations at Göbekli Tepe, and I was shocked to learn that yes, all of these trees, 4 orchards in total, were indeed planted on top of buried ruins at Göbekli Tepe more than a decade after excavations first began, which only further validates that there is no intention for the foreseeable future to fully excavate this site, as they would have to cut them all down to do so. And although Dr. Karul explains that it was the landowners themselves that planted the trees, the reason behind it also makes no sense, as he claims that it was in order to increase the value of the land. Well, that's interesting. Are we really going to pretend that planting olive trees at the world's oldest and most mysterious ancient site is going to increase the value in any way? The land is already priceless. And the fact remains that these hundreds of trees are sitting on top of ancient ruins, and the roots can potentially damage those ruins. And it is a matter of fact that it is not possible to fully excavate this site with those trees there. This is the reality of the situation. And the excuse involving the value of the land aside, Dr. Karul's response to me is totally wild and is the part that involves sanctioning me. Take a look at what he said, and I quote, "Yes, there are olive trees in the area, but they are not new. there are attempts to create a perception that Göbekli Tepe excavations have been halted. These allegations are totally unfounded. Yeah, I did not say that, and you're ignoring the fact that the concern is that a full excavation has been deferred for hundreds of years. But I digress, and then he said, everyone fabricates a different story. There are those who say excavations are being prevented because the true religions will be revealed. That last part is interesting as it reminds me of the Noah's Ark Göbekli Tepe altar possibility, but here's where it gets juicy, because he went on to say that these various claims are ridiculous and sad. We believe that those who make these claims should be sanctioned. And then followed up by saying, quote, these allegations are extremely saddening and shameful. Those who make these allegations will be subject to sanctions. There must be a price for deceiving the public this way. End quote. What exactly does he mean by sanction? Does he want to charge me with a crime and have me pay something? I doubt that, because sanctions typically involve travel bans. So it seems to me that that's exactly what he means. And obviously, there's no real way to keep me out of Göbekli Tepe without banning me from the country of Turkey, as I'd have to be stopped at customs at the airport when they check my passport. And I suspect that that's what he means. First, he said that I should be sanctioned, and then he followed up by directly saying that I will be. And that's all I know in that regard, but I've already been told by someone in Turkey that he is a very powerful and politically connected person. And by the way, he apparently has a hot temper, as he was sentenced to 5 months in prison for threatening to violently attack another archaeologist, saying that he will beat him severely. Yeah. And this isn't the only time he's gotten upset, as the allegations that they destroyed ancient ruins while constructing the roads, sidewalks, and viewing platforms while creating the infrastructure for tourism, which created worldwide outrage. In fact, he apparently had 2 public arguments with the wife of the late Klaus Schwab, who began excavations at Göbekli Tepe in the mid-1990s, until his untimely death in 2012. And his wife is also an archaeologist herself who worked at Göbekli Tepe alongside her husband. So she knows there was destruction. She saw it with her own eyes and reported on it. They literally covered ruins in concrete, which again is just another example of something that is now preventing a full excavation of the site. And by the way, Nekni denied the destruction and apparently got very upset about it. But perhaps the most provocative claim I made in my prior video involved the World Economic Forum's apparent association with this site. As I previously shared, a 20-year partnership was established in 2016 involving the Doges Group, which is a Turkish conglomerate that was made the, quote, sole partner of excavations and tourism management at Göbekli Tepe. They are the ones making decisions here. They have unlimited funding and resources as well. And they are the ones that funded all the infrastructure for tourism, which ultimately led to the destruction of those ruins. And as I previously shared, the CEO of the Doges Group is a longtime member of the World Economic Forum. And again, that 20-year partnership was literally announced at the annual WEF meeting in Davos, something that should make everyone's eyebrow go up. But do you want to hear something wild? A whistleblower who has worked at Göbekli Tepe reached out to me to let me know that there are protective roofs that they installed over the site that don't even function properly. They were meant to conserve the site and protect the exposed ruins from the elements. But do you see all this snow? This is there despite the roofs above. All the snow just simply blows right in and is messing up the excavation and eroding the ruins. They spent millions of dollars on shoddy infrastructure in a blatant rush to make millions of dollars from tourism. In fact, the late wife of Klaus Schmidt also put this on blast well over 4 years ago. Where are all the outraged archaeologists to denounce this? But going back to Dr. Krull's response to my allegations, he did bring up the WF's involvement, stating that it is not true that any outside forces have made any decisions at Göbekli Tepe. He said the scientists make the decisions themselves, and he went on to call the allegations fake news and made a comment stating that I was doing it for money as I had a sponsor I mentioned in my prior video. But what's interesting is that he totally omitted and said literally nothing about the Doges Group. Now, let me be clear. The WEF itself has no power, control, or authority. It's their members, which have infiltrated government cabinets, corporations, and the media, that enact their initiatives of the WEF, them being members, throughout the world with who they're now working for. So if you think that the WEF affiliation is far-fetched involving decision-making at Göbekli Tepe, wait until you hear this. But let me first quickly mention the sponsor of this video. If you have a dog, we've all been there. Our beloved pet goes from healthy and full of energy to sick and miserable in an instant and at the worst times. Then we're calling vets in the middle of the night or on weekends or right before we go to work, trying to find a clinic that will take us in. It's a terrible way to manage your dog's health, not to mention your stress levels, as well as your monthly budget. That's why you should purchase a pet emergency kit from Positive Health. It contains critical medications and supplies that can not only keep you out of the veterinary office, but maybe even save your dog's life. Head over to positive.com/brightinsight, that's PAWS-itive.com/brightinsight, and pick up a pet emergency kit with critical meds like activated charcoal, styptic powder, and more. Get 15% off with promo code BRIGHTINSIGHT today. Go to positive.com/brightinsight and use promo code BRIGHTINSIGHT to save 15% off. The link is in the description and the pinned comment down below. Now, as I was just saying, if you think the WF having any influence over Göbekli Tepe is far-fetched, wait till you hear this. Remember when I said that the partnership between the Doges Group and Göbekli Tepe was announced at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos in 2016? Well, do you want to know who had the equivalent position of Dr. Nekmi Karul at the time of this partnership? A gentleman by the name of Mehmet Özdagan, who is now retired, but he was the leading authority of Göbekli Tepe prior to the partnership with the Doges Group. And guess who he is associated with? That's right, the WEF. In fact, he was at the Davos meeting in 2016 where he gave the keynote address that announced the new partnership between Göbekli Tepe and the Doges Group. And he also gave an entire presentation on Göbekli Tepe while there in Davos, and you can find that presentation on the World Economic Forum's YouTube channel. You can't make this up. Even the president of Turkey has affiliations with the WEF, and that's him with Klaus Schwab. But the president of Turkey aside, and I am going to ask this question once again, just as I did in my prior video, why on earth is the WEF even remotely associated with excavation management of Göbekli Tepe or any archaeological site? Because if you didn't catch my prior video on Gunung Padang, you should go watch it, as it might blow your mind, as the associations with the WEF are far more brazen. I mean, Gunung Padang could possibly be the world's oldest archaeological site, potentially being a 27,000-year-old pyramidal structure, yet for inexplicable reasons there is no plan to fully excavate it as of today, despite the fact that ground-penetrating radar has identified what could be a subterranean tunnel and chamber which geologists say has strong potential to be man-made. And if that is the case, it could be the most important archaeological discovery of our lifetimes. Yet the key decision makers are within government positions, and these people are directly part of the WEF's global shapers. If you do not know what that means, go and watch my prior video and see for yourself. Various members of the WEF have seemingly infiltrated positions that ultimately control literally the world's two oldest archaeological sites on Earth. And the million-dollar question is why? And just as importantly to ask, why would excavations of these two profoundly important ancient sites be deferred to future generations? Especially at Göbekli Tepe, where there are literally over 100 T-pillars that remain buried in the earth. Pillars of which tell us a story about our lost ancient human history, and we will never know what the purpose of this site was until it is excavated, which, if you ask me, is a borderline crime against humanity. Everyone on Earth has a right to know about our ancient past and the origins of human civilization. And it seems to me that any true enthusiast of ancient history, along with every archaeologist, anthropologist, and academic alike, should be in unison calling for further excavations of this site. How could any of us be content on living the rest of our lives not knowing what unanswered questions of our lost past are waiting to be discovered here? I consider this matter to be exceptionally important, so I encourage you to share this video across social media, whether it's Facebook, Reddit, X.com, and everywhere else, because it will only be through the court of public opinion and the public getting invested in this that any chance of change is possible. And leave a comment and share your thoughts on everything that I've already discussed in this video. Share what reasons you think could possibly exist for them deferring excavations hundreds of years down the road. What sense does that make? And also, stay tuned for us. And actually, let me say this. Is it possible they're hiding something from us? That's the one comment I get above all else. And I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe they are hiding something. I don't know. But tune in later tonight, Saturday, August 24th. I'm going to be hosting a live stream discussing this video, everything in it. I'll be reading comments and answering questions about everything discussed in here. So tune in for that. And also, if you want to support me, follow me on locals.com or patreon.com. Your support there will help me a great deal. And also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, as I have a public presence there. I'm trying to grow, and I communicate on there daily and share a number of things on a wide variety of topics. But that being said, my name is Jimmy Corsetti. My channel is called Bright Insight. Hit the like button and subscribe. And thank you all for tuning in. And stay tuned for my next video, which will be up this time next week. Take care, everybody.
This did not personally happen to me. For all I know, it could be totally made up. But it was just so crazy that it just might be real. Back in mid-2011, I was working a temporary job as a data collector at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. I am a former military service member, and my qualifications landed me the job. Anyway, my job was fairly simple. I would document technical data on new communications equipment being field tested by the Army's Operational Test Command, OTC. One of the technicians who worked with me was also a field technician for DirecTV, or Dish. We would work long hours alongside the OTC staff and became good friends. Working long hours out in the middle of nowhere, storytelling became a good way to kill time. On one particular occasion, he shared a very strange story. He recounted working with the satellite provider out of Deming, New Mexico, a small town west of El Paso, Texas. One day, a call came in about a service installation within his area of responsibility. He was assigned a partner, and they both drove out to the property to install the service. The property was a ranch house on the outskirts of the Luna County line, a good driving distance from Deming, New Mexico. When they arrived at the property, they called the owner to inform her that they were at the entrance to her gate. A few minutes later, the owner, an older woman in her 70s or 80s, drove up to open the gate for them. They introduced themselves and proceeded to follow her back to her home. Along the way, he said he noticed a lot of strange sculptures lining the dirt road. The sculptures were made of sheet metal, aluminum, and wood. He said they looked like huge wind chimes, windmills, and other odd forms. What struck him was the size and complexity. Upon arriving at the house, they got to work. Everything seems normal about the property, aside from the sculptures. After an hour or two of working out in the hot New Mexican heat, he and his partner took a break. The old woman came outside and gave them some water and was very friendly. The old woman was very excited about her new service. She told the men her husband had passed away a few years back and she could use the entertainment since she lived by herself. After installing the dish on the roof, the techs asked permission to enter the house to set up the receiver and run the wires. The old woman was a bit hesitant, but agreed to let them in the house. Once inside the home, my friend said both of them became startled. Inside the home were dozens of concrete alien statues. Yes, aliens. Greys to be exact. They were lifelike, had limbs, fingers, eyes, and mouths, and he could see wrinkles and scars, way too precise to be molds or copies. They were everywhere, in the hallway, in the kitchen. No two were the same. They were different sizes, some taller than others. There was no rhyme or reason to them. Some were staring at the wall, some were in the way, just strange. He remembered thinking, who the hell put all of these statues here? Surely, the old woman could not have done that. Nonetheless, the men got to work and decided to keep their thoughts to themselves. A short time later, the woman broke the ice by talking about the concrete statues. She stated that her husband was an engineer with the U.S. Air Force in Roswell in mid-1947. An alien craft crashed at a ranch there. She said her husband not only worked at the crash site, but had proof. He said the old woman shared her late husband's personal photo album. It contained typical photos you would expect to see, wedding pictures and family portraits, but it turned strange when they saw old pictures of alien remains and of the wreckage, almost evidence-like, with measurements, CSI-type stuff. He could not believe it. He surely thought this lady was insane, or clearly pranking her. The woman went on to explain that government officials and engineers were able to decipher messages and symbols etched into the spaceship. Her husband became obsessed with them. She said her husband, along with the others, were able to decipher that the origins of humanity were at the edge of the moon, whatever that meant. She went on to say that was the reason behind the space race with the Soviet Union, that NASA's missions were some sort of cover-up. The real reason Americans went to the moon was to validate the evidence that they had found in Roswell, NM. She explained that after her husband retired, he was convinced that the origins of humanity were not at the edge of the moon, but at the edge of Luna County. Luna means moon in Spanish. Her husband and she bought a few acres of land at the edge of the county line, and he continued to search for answers and build those strange sculptures until his death. The old woman said that after her husband passed, she became depressed and very ill, and could not continue her husband's work. It was at that time that the Greys started manifesting. At first, it was one, then two. Sometimes they would go weeks without appearing, but over the months, and eventually years, they started manifesting in the dozens. She used the term manifest, meaning that they would just materialize in and out of space and time. She said that they were nocturnal beings and hated the daylight. During the night, they would manifest and keep her company, using telepathy to communicate with her. She said they cured her illness and depression and became very fond of her. She would spend long hours at night talking about humanity, our imperfections, and our destructive nature. She went on to explain that because they were nocturnal, during the day they would sleep or hibernate by turning to stone as a way to protect their bodies from the sunlight. That is why she needed satellite service, because during the day she had nobody to keep her company, and she would get bored. My friend remembered experiencing strange feelings of being watched by the statues and experiencing the so-called funhouse effect, becoming disoriented at times. They completed the work and showed the old woman her new satellite service. She was elated. She thanked them for their service, and just like that, it was over. The drive back to Deming was quiet. Who would believe them? Did they say what they thought they did? Was it an elaborate hoax by the old woman? They ended up sharing the story with those who were crazy enough to listen to it. When he shared this story with me, I was dumbfounded. Such a crazy story. Again, not my experience, simply a story that my friend shared with me. Real? Maybe. I don't know. There is no such thing as Area 51. Sorry. And the fact that it's the golden egg of conspiracy theories worldwide is exactly what the US government wants. I'm writing this in a bit of a rush, and I don't have my thoughts organized, so I'm just going to break it down as follows. Groom Lake, Paradise Ranch, Edwards AF Extension, Restricted Training Facility, UX 104. These are just a few names of the place that you know as Area 51. I don't know much about its history, but essentially, it was intended by the US Air Force to be a secret weapons testing facility during the Cold War. It had a few on-site extensions. One of them was for developing experimental rockets and jet engines. One was for training contingents of troops for nuclear warfare and post-apocalyptic survival, etc. But much like the third Star Wars movie, the site and its purpose got out around the time of the Roswell incident, and a media frenzy popularized the base. The government tried at first to quell the speculation about it, but then adopted another strategy: feed into the hype and simply move the base a few dozen miles away. Today, Groom Lake, Area 51, is a small but functional military airport and base. It's got a bunch of bunkers, mostly housing low security servers, and some munitions tests are performed there. Staff are regularly moved in and out, mostly thugs who are low on the totem pole and trying to climb the ladder to the real facility. There are some very outdated nuclear fallout shelters that are still maintained and used for storage. The facility consumes an enormous amount of power, and everything possible is done to make it look like a well-guarded military base that is engaged in some huge secret operations. The employees really do fly there every day from Las Vegas on inconspicuous jets marked as Janet, sometimes referred to as just another non-existent terminal. And they want you to notice and wonder. They want you to wonder where those jets are going, and they never want you to spend 1 second thinking about where they came from. The real Area 51. This is the most exciting part, because as far as I can tell, in my limited and clandestine researching, nobody has ever divulged the real secret before. It's pretty highly guarded, and they straight up murder people who are stupid enough to share it. Murder isn't even the right word. They erase people from existence, sometimes entire families. That's why the government freaks out when they find out that one of their employees is terminal and have nothing left to lose. It's why, if you're an employee here, you only see their doctors, so that they know about your health before you even know about it. They want you to die real quick of a sudden heart attack, so that you never have a moment to think about how you might do a public service and air their dirty laundry. And sometimes, they induce those heart attacks when they determine you to be an HMT, or health-motivated crack. But I did not need to see a doctor to know that I am suffering from the same malignant tumor that killed my father, glioblastoma multiforme. Every 3 months, we get a health evaluation, and every 6 months, we get a CAT scan. I simply did not report the very damning symptoms this past evaluation, and I will probably be gone before they scan me next. I really wanted to do this instead. Maybe just to be the first, I guess. The only other thing I've ever done with my life is fix computers. The real secret military base is McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas. The history of the airport was always bound up in military involvement. Before and during World War II, the Army Corps of Engineers and the Air Force were building, storing, training, and doing all sorts of things there. Basically, the government and its corporate benefactors and the military-industrial complex, of course, acquired full ownership of the airport around the time Area 51/Groom Lake exploded in the public eye. It was a rush job and a simple solution. For all intents and purposes, McCarran is an airport. It moves civilians in and out all over the world, just like any other airport on Earth. But its subterranean operations are really something else entirely. First of all, you have to understand the structure of this military base. Because it serves ostensibly as a business of public transportation, every single aspect of the base has dual functions. This is called masking, and it is deployed with remarkable effectiveness at McCarran. To name a few examples, the constant takeoffs and landings of airplanes provide sound camouflage for cutting-edge engine tests. The public completely ignores these sounds and dismiss them as the standard cacophony of airports. Some of the jets themselves are even equipped with technology under test, while others are used to transport hundreds of government employees dressed as vacationing civilians. At any given time in McCarran, up to 6 of the gates are filled with employees of the highest echelons of the U.S. military and government. They sit around on their iPhones, dressed as college kids, in their pajamas, or weary businessmen, and they are paid to look the part. The entire base is heavily guarded by plainclothes soldiers, military police, tactical specialists, counter-terrorism forces, and all kinds of soldiers scurry about the airport, dressed like cops, airport security, and desk attendants. Their weapons are usually concealed sidearms. The real firepower is packed by the boys waiting around on the ground. Assault rifles and armor-piercing weaponry is stored around the airport, public spaces, and various places. It's not hard to do, because nobody is looking for it. And of course, they hire a good number of civilians to work the TSA and other positions. This is called mixing, and it is necessary. What kind of airport would never post any job listings? Have you ever watched the mechanics ducking in and out of the planes outside, or seen your luggage loaded onto the plane as you board? Well, all of that cargo transport activity acts as a cover for the mass movement of special forces, lab equipment, military hardware, exotic building materials, etc. It's not hard to do. You drive one of those rigs by with all of the luggage spilling out of it, and then you instinctively don't question what's on the other 4 rigs behind it. We even have mix-up and spills occasionally, and nobody bats an eye. You are always exposed to some level of radiation while flying. And McCarran, by the way, is why the standard of safe exposure is set where it is at. But excess radiation from weapons testing is vented into the earth and out of the nearby desert. Having an airport to explain the radiation is an effective means of ridding the base of nosy folks with Geiger counters, but the true genius of this top-secret military installation is at the larger scale. The base was built under an airport because of the enormity of its power consumption, but it consumes a lot more power than a regular airport, so it was built in a city that consumes a tremendous amount of power, Las Vegas. So the base is hidden from view, even on the electric power grid. Area 51, not so much, and that is on purpose. Inside the base. So, if Area 51 is the distraction, what do we call the real one? It has many names, but it is usually referred to as the Nexus. That's an acronym, but not many people know what it means, not even me. Everything about the Nexus, from its operations to its structure, is compartmentalized. That means everything is need to know, and virtually nobody knows anything more than their own specific task. You could work in an office in the Nexus, doing something like accounting, and never have one single clue what the woman next to you does, or the guy down the hall. They say not even the president knows exactly what's going on there. Just a few generals and some dudes in the CIA. The business culture here is insane. It's like North Korea. Everyone is smiling, everyone is fine, and everyone is happy to say just a few phrases about what it is they do. When we're allowed to socialize, which is not much. Every line is bugged. Every room has a camera in it. And nobody knows who is watching, or listening, or when. So that makes you think. Nobody here is telling me the truth about anything. Not even the guy I share an office with. I wonder if any of them know why we are here. People you've worked with for a long time will suddenly get reassigned or have a medical emergency, and you will never see them again. And nobody will remember that person, no matter how many people you ask. I actually got hired to do some programming for the Navy when I was in my early 20s, out of college, and then got sent to Grim Lake to do server tests. They liked my IT/networking skill, so after a series of strange psychological tests and mountains of non-disclosure agreements and background searches, I got offered a job at a facility near Las Vegas proper. Here are a few stipulations of the job, by the way. It's a $1.5 million after-tax lump sum, plus a $220,000 a year stipend, housing, car, medical paid for, but psychological breakdowns, anxiety attacks, grave health conditions, and family issues void the contract. I also signed approximately 2 new non-disclosure agreements per week, most of which read under penalty of death somewhere. Employees are not allowed to leave the grounds for 5 years, and we all live underground. Term of service is 5 years, and 4 in debriefing. We're in. We get to live in Vegas, but report to another facility 4 days a week. We are discharged and observed for the rest of their lives. Our passports are permanently void. We cannot ever leave the continental U.S. I heard a statistic that 20% of former employees take their own life. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, I bet it's not actually that. The base is underground. It's a network of large structures called hives, which form what is called a colony, or the Nexus. We make lots of Resident Evil jokes, by the way, except unlike in that movie, the government does not try to make its employees feel comfortable with fake forests and windows overlooking digital cityscapes. It is a dark, dreary, Soviet-style labyrinth of halls and bunkers, replete with all sorts of submarine-like features, water in airtight hatches, trap doors, reinforced blast doors, etc. The only exception are the office buildings inside, where chair moisteners like me work. They look just like the office that you work in, except the men with guns standing guard 24/7 everywhere, looking over your shoulder. Oh, and the beautiful, almost surreal glow of the cutting-edge laboratories that pock the lower levels of each building. I've never been in them, but I've passed by at the time. There are 4 hives to my knowledge, although I would not be surprised if there were more. I work in Hive 1. I run some of the servers for the few other guys on one particular floor. There are 16 floors in our hive. but we monitor and maintain all of the servers in our work, so we move around a bit. I've gotten to skim some of the data that passes through, and from what I can tell you, we are the most boring hive. I've compiled the following list based on the things I've intercepted on our network, and also from hearsay from other coworkers. The Nexus has multiple networks, and they are all decentralized, but there are some ways in which they communicate, and it is via those lines of communication which I am privy to some sensitive information. Here is what I know. I have 1. Finance, accounting, operations, organization divisions, troop training and housing, and some small-scale weapons testing. I have 2. Chemical engineering, some nanotech research, and advanced psychological fitness, whatever that means, for elite military forces. Probably Black Ops stuff, and how to survive 40 years in solitary confinement in a Siberian prison. I also have reason to believe that this is the hive where the bigwigs meet and live. Hive 3. Upper levels equals bioweapon and disease research / testing. If the government has zombies, they've got to be here. I've wanted to make so many goddamn zombie jokes over the years, but I never know which of my coworkers is a rat. Lower level equals advanced space travel and space warfare technologies, particle engines and gravitational beams and the like. Guessing, no real evidence for this. Science fiction stuff. I once saw an email of all sorts of coded language, marked AB, which is widely believed to refer to astrobiology, that is alien life. Maybe it's just some single-celled organisms, or fossilized plants from some meteor, or maybe it's something much more advanced. Whatever it is, there must be some reason it's not on the upper levels with all the biologists. Hive 4. Total informational blackout. There are encryptions and firewalls and network security features protecting this hive that I have never seen before, not even on top-secret Navy projects I worked in the past. I'm being very non-specific in the language that I use to describe our server clusters and networks because I don't want to tell them exactly who I am. They will eventually find out anyway, but there is a widely whispered rumor about Hive 4. Allegedly, the most terrifying thing in the world is in that structure on floor 15. There are a few unusual things about Hive 4. First of all, none of the top brass has clearance to get in there. They access it remotely via video feed in their conference rooms, and materials are often transported from 4 to 2 for physical review. I don't know why our bigwigs won't go into 4, but maybe it's because it's too dangerous. There was one guy who worked in 4 a few years ago when I first started, and he caused the first Nexus-wide lockdown I've ever seen. He was being escorted for 1 thumpers, what we call the squads of black-booted soldiers that grant access to different hives, and he started shrieking about IDAs. I did not hear his screams, but I heard the gunshot while I was eating lunch. They put a bullet in the back of his head before he could finish his sentence. IDAs, by the way, are interdimensional anomalies. I have no further information on what those are. Another thing I've read minimally about are the twins. I don't know who or what these are, but they are the above top secret gem of Hive 4. It is treasonous to even correspond about them on our secure networks unless you are cleared to do so, and only 4 employees are. I have only seen a few things about them. One was a medical record, no vitals, unusual vocalizations that manifest hallucinations and psychosis in nearby employees, and skin that produces violent nausea when touched. The document was basically speculation that the skin functions much like the Australian stinging tray or a jellyfish. I read documents about people who worked with them as well. In 4, a woman was remanded to the psychological ward after being in the same room as them, and a soldier who stood outside the laboratory where they are kept basically took his own life. Specifically, he peeked inside during a routine access, then began bashing his own brains out with the butt of a pistol while singing an Irish folk song. The woman who was remanded to psych was even weirder. During breakfast with her colleagues, she grabbed a fork, stood up, walked out of the mess hall, stripped all of her clothes off, blinded herself in both eyes, then somehow managed to make her way all the way up to floor 1, where the access to the corridor to Hive 3 is located. How she managed to operate the dozens of keycode readers, passcode boxes, and retinal scanners is still under review. Last email regarding her was sent in 2012 about how she sits in the dark of solitary on floor 11 psych ward with a permanent and blissful grin on her face. One of my colleagues whom I trust told me that he saw the twins once through hacked access to a video feed. He said they are woman-like, about twice as tall as a full-grown man, with unidentifiable black growths dangling from their heads, like hair but thicker, and they basically float a few inches off the ground and drag their toes lightly as they move. They are utterly pale. He never saw the faces, but claims that they appear to distort reality, or at least the video feed, in such a way that space looks bent around them. Perhaps these are the IDAs that the earlier dude was screaming about. This is all I have for now, but hopefully the world knows the truth someday about what goes on down here. We are all basically prisoners. We have very limited and supervised access to the internet, so if you don't hear from me again, assume they figured me out. Bime, 19, accepts an internship at an old jail, now museum, located behind the county courthouse. Building was used as a jail from 1876 to 1990. Get the tour. Taken up 3 flights of stairs up to the attic. The attic is large and open. No electricity running up to it. They used a construction lamp with an extension cord running downstairs. The vast space was pretty much used for storage at that point. My boss explains that when the town prospered, they ran out of room to do hanging-styled executions out back, so they started doing them in the attic. Well, okay. Weeks into my internship, I get tasked with going up to the attic to search the wardrobe trunks for costumes. Head up to the attic. Construction lamp is immediately to the left of the door, lighting the whole area. Past the light, it obviously dims the whole room. Back turned towards the door, digging out dresses in the trunk. Here's someone walking up the creaky stairs. Whole room dims, as if someone walked in front of the light. Me, thinking it was only the other intern. I can't find what they want. I'm just going to start bringing down random dresses. No response. Turn around. No one is there. Grab dresses and nope the hell out. Get downstairs and ask if someone came upstairs. Nope. My boss starts smiling. I guess Ralph was curious about you. What? She proceeds to tell me about an inmate named Ralph, hung in the attic for killing his mother. She tells me how over the years, weird stuff kept happening. Shows me pictures of the museum getting trashed at night, twins taken from the shed, wrapped all around the building. Mind you, that the shed and back of the building is enclosed by a 15-foot fence with barbed wire and tossed over the 3-story building and wrapped around the smokestack. The creepiest place in the building were the dungeon-like cells in the basement. We were refused access to the juvenile dungeon cells that were only accessible by a trap door in the floor. I used to work in an old-age home. Aside from the more mundane horrors, like genitals literally sagging past the knees and such, there was one lady in particular who was eerie, among some other stories. The place I worked in had a big central room, and 4 wings branching off from it in a squashed X formation. Fitting, eh? This woman was in a mostly empty branch, way at the end of the hall, so going to her room for anything meant that you were pretty far away from anybody else, except for her. At night, the only lights kept on were some dim ones, every 20 feet or so in the hallways, so to go to and from her room, you had to pass through dark areas. Not too bad. Whenever I worked the 3rd shift, like clockwork, her alarm would go off around 3 or 4 a.m. Now this woman uses a wheelchair, mind you, and like many her age, / in her condition, she was slow as all hell. But her alarm would ring, which only happens when someone pushes their little button necklace. Only every time, hers would be hanging on the wall across from her bed. They're supposed to keep them on their nightstand in case something happens, but this lady never listened. First few times, we thought that maybe the batteries were dying. Replaced the batteries. Eventually just gave her a new alarm. Still rang at the same times every night. No way she could have done it, being as old and slow as she is. As this goes on, lady goes downhill fast. She's losing a lot of weight. Her hair is falling out more and more, and she's basically looking really frail and sick. despite doctors not finding anything wrong with her. The lady is still energetic somehow, despite it all. So eventually we figure it's just her age, and her body is just getting ready for death. Now, part of our job was to bathe these people, and it's important that we check them for bruises, swelling, etc. Anything that could be a sign of natural illness or even abuse, be it from other workers, other old occupants, even what they might do to themselves. One day I'm working a double shift, so shift 2 and 3. While shift 3 is mostly just doing rounds to make sure none of the elderly croaked in their sleep. Second shift takes them to dinner, gets them ready for bed, etc. Another worker is assigned to give this lady a bath this night, and it's not just a few minutes into it that we hear a scream. Then the worker, speaking on our little walkie-talkies that we are required to use. She tells us in a shaky voice that she needs someone immediately, that something is really wrong. I'm really nosy, so of course, I am the first to volunteer. I get down to this room, and my co-worker is as white as a sheet. She does not say anything, just points into the private bathroom at the little old lady, sitting on her shower seat without a care in the world. Nothing seems wrong at first, but then I look at her back. Somehow, this lady has 2 spots of skin missing from her back, right on the inner corner areas of her shoulder blades. And even though the woman had a bath not 2 nights before and was completely fine, somehow these wounds look half-healed, like they've been there for a while. What the hell? Since she's not bleeding and doesn't seem to be in pain, we dress her in a robe and wheel her on down to the nurse's station. Nurses are just as shocked and can't figure out what the hell is going on. She was fine throughout the day, but suddenly, here they are. So we start questioning her, figuring someone must have hurt her, and she'd know what was going on, and might be able to give us a clue. She smiles and says it's just the wings growing in, that the angel is helping her get to heaven faster. So we have to file an official report, and we end up just patching up the wounds for now, giving her a sponge bath, and putting her to sleep. Her room alarm does not ring all that night, and my shift ends. I come back later that night for my next shift to find out that the woman died that night, apparently, peacefully, and from old age.
Tinfoil hat. End of the month, I got some comedy chaoses coming up, and I have more dates coming. I will upload those as we go. And yeah, enjoy this episode. All right, let's get back in. Let's get into it. Very excited to have him back. It's always an interesting conversation. We start with one thing, and who knows where we're going to go. And that's why these are the best interviews. Very excited to have him back. He's the author, researcher. He's a dominator. He's he's a Nephilim giant. Please welcome Christopher Knowles. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, especially after that kind of introduction.
You look great, buddy. I don't know what you're doing, but you're looking shiny and you're looking good.
Well, you know, clean living, brother. Clean living. No alcohol, no cigarettes, you know.
How's that going? How's that going?
It's going good.
Yeah, it's the best. Waking up sober is I absolutely love it. So, a very interesting conversation. Who was I just talking to? But my friend Tino Sanchez was he was bringing up that Tucker Carlson was talking about how they're trying to get rid of nicotine because it increases people's testosterone. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've never heard that, but if that's true, it wouldn't surprise me. And they're doing everything else to drive everybody's T down, so.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, can you get that clean nicotine that doesn't have all the chemicals in it that cause you to go crazy? And I think pouches maybe are better than smoke. I think smoking's really bad, obviously, for your lungs, and it is a big part of aging you.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of people are vaping now, so you can get your nicotine fixed that way.
And you hear that. Like, that can't be good for your lungs. When you hit that robot dick, it can't be good for your lungs, dude. Well,
hey, there's a lot of better ways to drive up your T than nicotine, all right? So I'm just saying.
Somebody told me because I just got a tattoo sleeve on my left arm that I need to start doing TRT. I got to start HGHing it. I got to just start doing it.
It's funny. I thought the same thing. I was like, I wonder if he wishes he had gotten a little more jacked before. You could have more real estate for that. You know, the good thing now is the bigger you get, the bigger the Godzilla gets.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So, Christopher, for those who may not be familiar with your numerous appearances on the show, one of our favorite guests, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where our listeners can find you?
Well, I've been a writer and a blogger, published writer for better part of 20-something years now. I've been doing the blog since 2007. Do a lot of decodes, do a lot of symbolic breakdowns, and I'll tell you, my job is getting easier and easier because they're getting more and more blatant with the symbolism. So it's kind of like, yeah, hey. So I mean, I have a background in studying the classics and studying ancient religion and studying the Roman Empire particularly. And it gives me a great vantage point to look at all these sorts of provocations that we're seeing now, particularly at the Olympics, and tell you exactly where it's coming from, because a lot of people get sidetracked, a lot of satanic stuff and a lot of bad misinterpretations that kind of just send people running in circles. But that's what they want. I mean, the people who put these provocations out there, want everybody to start running around, like chickens with their head cut off, screaming satanic, whatever. When it's really a very specific religion that I first noticed back in the 90s when I was walking around New York all the time. I was working in New York, I was freelancing, I was spending a lot of time in that Murray Hill area, the area around Grand Central Station, which is just a giant pagan temple, straight up. And I just started noticing all these, I don't even know what to call them. I mean, a lot of lobbies you go into in a lot of those buildings, you'll see all sorts of very ancient, mostly Greco-Roman kind of symbolism. I mean, some of these lobbies look like temples, they look like ancient temples. So I really got a sense of, this is the seat of power, this is the seat